assess and quickly fix your own personal body symmetry. Before delving into the host of tips, tricks, and hacks you can use to increase your own personal symmetry and take advantage of your newfound understanding of the extreme importance of symmetry, let's go over a few self-assessment symmetry tests so that you can get a sense of how well your body is currently aligned. First, stand in front of a mirror with your arms at your side, pinkies turned in and thumbs turned out, and look at your shoulders. Is one shoulder higher? Does one rotate inside more than the other? Your shoulders should be symmetrical and square. If they aren't, it means they're imbalanced. While in the same position, look at your hands in the mirror. Do you see the backs of your hands or your thumb and forefinger? Is it difficult to keep your pinkies in and your thumbs out? If you see the backs of your hands, or if you have the urge to rotate your hands forward, if holding the position feels difficult or unnatural, then your shoulders are internally rotated. Now take off your shoes, stand in the same position, and close your eyes. For 30 to 60 seconds, pay close attention to how your body weight is distributed on your feet. Is there more weight on one foot than on the other? Is your weight forward on the balls of your feet or farther back towards your heels? Is it on the inside or outside of your feet? Now open your eyes and look down. You want both feet to point straight ahead, with the toes of each foot drawing even with those of the other. If your feet turn out, it likely means that your hips and lower leg muscles aren't engaging the way they should. If your feet turn in, you may have excessive internal hip rotation or supination, or a turning inward of the foot. To see how simple adjusting your symmetry can be, even without going back in time and selecting new parents, learning proper posture early in life, or spending your childhood barefoot or in minimalist shoes, you can perform a few simple symmetrical alignment exercises before reassessing your posture. Exercise 1. Sitting arm circles. This exercise rebalances your shoulder joints by moving the shoulders through internal and external rotation. First, place a chair in front of a mirror so that you can watch your shoulders. Start by sitting in the middle of the chair with your feet pointed straight ahead, 4 to 6 inches apart. Second, relax your stomach and roll your pelvis forward to create a small arch in your low back. Hold this position during the entire exercise. Third, squeeze your shoulder blades back and extend your arms straight out from your sides at shoulder level. Fourth, curl your fingertips to your palms as if you're making a fist and point your thumbs out straight ahead. As you do this, keep your arms straight and at shoulder level. Fifth, with palms facing down and thumbs pointing straight forward, rotate your hands up and forward in 6-inch shoulder circles for 30 reps. Sixth, now reverse direction, with palms facing up and thumbs pointed backward. Rotate your hands up and backward in the same small shoulder circles for 30 reps. 7. Keep your arms at shoulder level throughout the entire exercise. Exercise 2. Sitting elbow curls. This next move promotes scapular retraction and helps to pull your shoulders and upper back muscles into place for a tall, proud posture. 1. Stay in the seated position with your pelvis tilted forward, back slightly arched, and stomach relaxed. Curl your fingertips to your palms and point your thumbs out. Place your knuckles at your temple with your thumbs pointed down toward the ground. 2. Pull your elbows back and then close them together in front of your face as though you're flapping your wings. Keep your elbows up at shoulder level the entire time. Keep your head still and erect. Continue to open and close your elbows with your knuckles at the temples for 30 reps. Be sure to bring your elbows all the way back, as if you're sitting up against a wall and trying to get your elbows to touch the wall. When you bring your elbows together to touch in front of your face, try to keep them as high as possible. Exercise 3. Kneeling ankle squeezes. These squeezes promote hip stability through bilateral engagement of the external rotators of the hips and can, quote, turn on a weak butt. 1. Kneel with a pillow or block between your ankles and feet. Keep your pelvis tilted forward and stomach muscles relaxed throughout the exercise. 2. Focusing on using your glutes and pressing through the entire inner edges of your feet, squeeze and release the pillow or block between the entirety of the inner edge of your ankles and feet for 30 reps. Keep your upper body relaxed and look straight ahead. Exercise 4. Supine foot circles and point flexes. This exercise targets the muscles of the lower leg and foot and can assist with ankle, knee, and hip symmetry and function. 1. Lie on your back with one leg flexed knee. Keep the foot that's on the floor pointed straight up toward the ceiling with your thigh muscles relaxed. 2. Circle the foot of the leg you're holding in one direction for 30 reps and then reverse direction for 30 more reps. Make sure the knee stays absolutely still, with all movement coming from the ankle, not the knee. Make the biggest, fullest circles you can possibly make with your foot. Imagine that you're scraping out the inside of a bowl with your foot. 3. Do 30 reps of pointing and flexing that same foot, bringing the toes of the elevated leg back toward the shin to flex, then reversing direction to point the foot forward. 4. Switch legs and repeat. After these 4 simple exercises, you can now reassess your posture. First, stand in front of the mirror and check the position of your hands and shoulders. Do you notice any difference in your shoulder alignment or hand positioning? Next, close your eyes and check in on the weight distribution between your feet. Finally, glance down at your feet. Are they closer to being straight? These exercises are derived from a practice called egoscue, which is a fantastic form of alignment that I'll talk about more later in this chapter. If you sprinkle these moves into your morning movement routine, see Chapter 21 for more details on how to create this routine on a consistent basis, you'll note continued improvements in alignment, symmetry, and function throughout the day. How to eat your way to symmetry. Before you hit the weights, stretch with bands, do yoga, and foam roll to tackle asymmetries, it's important for both yourself and any children in your life that you begin with an understanding of how to eat your way to better symmetry. The Weston A. Price diet is well known for providing the average human body with most of the biochemical constituents necessary for better bones, skin, nails, teeth, hair, and overall health. So who was this guy? Dr. Price was a well-known, well-respected dentist practicing in Cleveland, Ohio from the 1920s to the 1940s. His works were widely published in prestigious, peer-reviewed journals, and he even experimented in his home laboratory, evaluating the nutrient content of different foods. Price wanted to know how diet impacted human physiological growth and development. In the 1930s, he traveled all over the world to study Pacific Islanders, Australian Aborigines, the Inuit, Swiss Highlanders, South American Indians, and New Zealand Maori. Even at that point in history, many indigenous populations hadn't been exposed to the Western diet of highly processed, low-nutrient content foods like white flour and sugar. Typically, these people who consumed the nutrient-dense diets their ancestors had eaten for generations were handsome and had broad faces, wide dental arches, exceptionally aligned teeth, and no tooth decay. But when these groups began consuming white flour, sugar, and nutrient-poor Western foods, within a single generation, their faces grew narrower, their dental arches became irregular, their teeth became overcrowded, and tooth decay ran rampant. Price determined that these growth abnormalities and infections were due to poor nutrient availability and absorption. He also believed that Western dietary patterns promote the development of allergies and airway obstruction. This in turn leads to mouth breathing, poor tongue posture, and the resulting growth of long, narrow faces, which, as you'll learn in this chapter, can be reversed via breathwork and nutrition. But it all began with diet. Price also found common factors in the traditional diets of the above-mentioned people groups that promoted the childhood growth of strong, straight, and symmetrical features. He found that traditional cultures even had special preconception diets, often 1 and even 2 years before birth, ensuring the mothers had adequate storage of crucial vitamins, minerals, and nutrients. These diets, the modern Weston A. Price diet, which I recommend to just about every woman who's expecting or trying to conceive, usually included some combination of grass-fed meats and organ meats such as liver, eggs from pastured chickens, raw milk and butter, cod liver oil, fish eggs, fermented foods such as cheese, yogurt, and sauerkraut, soaked nuts and properly prepared grains, wild plants, and fresh fruits and veggies. These foods supplied important nutrients essential for proper infant development, particularly vitamins A, D, E, and K2. As a matter of fact, the last 3 women I've assisted with nutrition during their pregnancies, following the Weston A. Price guidelines, have all given birth to beautiful, perfectly healthy, and symmetrical babies weighing more than 10 pounds. Back when Price was still practicing, experts frequently blamed poor facial and physical symmetry on racial mixing. Even modern orthodontists blame poor symmetry and development on everything from genetics to thumb sucking to consuming soft foods. all of these variables may indeed affect symmetry, but Price discovered that the largest variable responsible for asymmetry issues is the steep decline in nutrient density in modern diets. In particular, his studies led him to the conclusion that facial narrowing takes place because the fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K2 become deficient in the diet. Current research backs up Price's theory. In rats, researchers have demonstrated that deficiencies in vitamin K2 during pregnancy cause facial dysmorphology. During fetal development, K2-dependent proteins concentrate in the nasal septal cartilage to assist in proper growth of facial bone structure. If the fetus doesn't receive enough K2 during weeks 6 to 9 of gestation, this cartilage calcifies early, causing a condition called maxillonasal dysplasia, or the underdevelopment of the maxilla, or the upper jaw. This is pretty important when you consider the fact that the shape of the maxilla bone determines the shape and symmetry of the entire middle third of the face. K2 also requires vitamins A and D to function properly, so these three nutrients are critical for the proper growth of a fetus's facial bones. As Dr. Shanahan points out in Deep Nutrition, this also means that to have the most symmetrical children, adequate time is needed between babies to allow a mother to replenish these vitamin stores before growing the next child. She also reveals a surprising body of research that backs up what Price discovered. Children in multiple countries who aren't exposed to high levels of fat-soluble vitamins, vitamins A, D, E, and K2, when they're young or in the womb, tend to have weak bone structures and significant facial asymmetry. In addition to vitamin K2, let's take a look at the importance of vitamin A for symmetry. Vitamin A is certainly necessary for vision and is often marketed as a supplement for eye health. But the truth is that less than 1% of the vitamin A you eat is used in this way. Much of the vitamin A you consume is instead used to maintain the morphological health and function of epithelial tissues in your body, including your skin and the lining of your gut. Not only that, but vitamin A is also directly involved in maintaining normal phenotypic expression, which is the observable characteristics expressed by your genetic code. By depriving yourself or your kids of sufficient vitamin A, you might be causing not only less than beautiful skin or an unhealthy gut, but also improper genetic expression, which has obvious implications for physical symmetry, function, and beauty. Vitamin D is another perfect example. A study done on the effects of deficiency in this fat-soluble vitamin in the absence of exposure to direct sunlight or artificial substitutes for sunlight concluded that vitamin D plays a key role in the deposition of calcium in bones, which means that a deficiency of these nutrients can result in rickets, osteomalacia, or softening of the bones, and abnormal or asymmetrical bone structure. Vitamin D plays a particularly important role in the strengthening of bones, as well as the absorption and mobilization of calcium throughout the body. Once the pro-hormone vitamin D3 has been produced by the body or consumed in the form of vitamin D-rich foods, it's processed first by the liver and then by the kidneys, where it reaches its hormonal form. This form of the vitamin acts through a nuclear receptor to perform calcium absorption, phosphate absorption in the intestine, calcium mobilization in the bones, and calcium reabsorption in the kidney. Finally, there's the fat-soluble vitamin E, which is necessary for circulation and tissue repair and healing, and which may slow the aging process because of its potent ability to quell free radicals. Anyone who has eaten an appreciable amount of modern processed vegetable oils likely requires high amounts of vitamin E to combat the damage these polyunsaturated fats can cause. Vitamin E is found in animal foods such as butter and organ meats, and in plant foods such as nuts and seeds, legumes, and dark green leafy vegetables. By focusing on foods on the Weston A. Price diet, you'll build better bones, better teeth, better hair, skin, nails, and beyond. That's right. If you currently have poor bone density, facial asymmetries, tooth decay, dry hair, and brittle nails, you can change all of these, even if you're already out of childhood. In addition, if you introduce these same foods into your children's diet, they'll grow to be taller, more attractive, more symmetrical people. This is exactly why we're raising our twin boys on grass-fed butter, sardines, liver, raw dairy, fermented foods, and a host of other beauty-producing foods. There has never existed in our home a version of a kid's meal, such as macaroni and cheese, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, or even pizza. These foods were never an option, and if you didn't want liver pate day with your salmon and hollandaise sauce, you could simply go to bed hungry. Because their palates develop for real, nutrient-dense food, when we eat out, our boys turn down the children's menu of chicken wings, mini burgers, and french fries, and instead choose the complex, natural, organic, fat-soluble, vitamin-rich foods from the adult menu. As a result, their jaws are symmetrical, their teeth straight, their bones solid, and their brains well-functioning. They carry themselves as more reliable, capable, and strong humans. Does this mean that they may get better jobs, their salaries may go up, and their co-workers and friends may look up to them more due to their height and symmetry? While I won't deny there's a host of other factors that also affect societal success, I do believe that food choices play a significant role. You'll find a link to a more thorough explanation of Price's diet at boundlessbook.com/17, but here are some of the basics. Unprocessed whole foods. Pasture-fed meats and animal foods like beef, game animals, lamb, poultry, and eggs. Wild, non-farm raised fish, fish eggs, and shellfish. Full-fat dairy products from pasture-raised cows. Ideally, these should be raw and/or fermented products like raw milk, yogurt, kefir, cultured butter, raw cheeses, and fresh and sour cream. Liberal use of animal or animal-derived fats, including lard, tallow, egg yolks, butter, and cream. Traditional oils like extra virgin olive oil and expeller-pressed sesame oil, and limited amounts of expeller-pressed flaxseed oil, as well as coconut oil, palm oil, and palm kernel oil. Cod liver oil, enough to provide 10,000 IU of vitamin A and 1,000 IU of vitamin D. It's less well-known and less popular, but emu oil can also accomplish this. Organic fresh fruits and vegetables. Soaked, sprouted, or sour leavened whole grains, legumes, and nuts. These processes eliminate anti-nutrients like phytic acid and enzyme inhibitors. Frequent consumption of lacto-fermented fruits, vegetables, drinks, and condiments. Homemade beef, chicken, and lamb stocks made with the bones of non-GMO animals, as well as stock made with wild fish. Filtered water for both drinking and cooking. Unrefined salts and a wide range of herbs and spices. Homemade salad dressings made with extra virgin olive oil, raw vinegar, and limited amounts of expeller-pressed flaxseed oil. Moderate use of traditional natural sweeteners such as raw honey, maple sugar, maple syrup, dehydrated cane sugar juice, sold as Rapadura sugar, stevia powder, and date sugar. Strictly moderate consumption of unpasteurized beer and wine. Cooking these foods in cast iron, stainless steel, glass, or high-quality enameled pots and pans. But symmetry doesn't stop with food. Even with a perfect diet and our best attempts at adequate nutrition, certain habits can result in distortion of the dental arches and facial symmetries, as can movement patterns and lifestyle habits. Let's begin with one that we explored in Chapter 3, breathing. How to breathe yourself to better symmetry. You've already discovered a host of valuable breathing tips in Chapter 3, but what I didn't emphasize in that chapter is how darn important the practice of Buteyko breathing and the type of breathwork that I first learned from Oxygen Advantage author Patrick McKeown are to your overall symmetry, your physical performance, and surprisingly, your sleep quality. When you look at the facial and jaw formation of the vast majority of top-class athletes and Olympic champions, such as Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal, Steve Hooker, Sonia Richards-Ross, and Usain Bolt, what's immediately noticeable is the forward growth of the face and wide, symmetrical jaws. One likely reason for this prevalence is that high-level athletic ability and success depends on having an open, well-formed airway, which in turn depends on symmetrical facial structure. Interestingly, the most decorated Olympian of all time, Michael Phelps, is one of the few athletes of his caliber who doesn't possess a strong forward jaw and a wide facial structure, but he's also participating in a sport heavily dependent on mouth breathing. In Chapter 3, I explained that, as detailed by the late Dr. Konstantin Buteyko and author Patrick McKeown, the best, most natural way to breathe is through the nose, although many children, especially those with autoimmune issues such as asthma, heavy mucus, or nasal congestion, tend to breathe through the mouth. Unfortunately, young children who develop a mouth-breathing habit typically develop asymmetrical faces and poor jaw and tooth alignment. This is because mouth breathing impacts facial growth in a couple of ways. It can cause the face to grow lengthwise and become long and narrow, and it inhibits the full development of the jaws, which shift slightly back from their ideal positions, reducing the openness of the airway. You can try a little experiment to see how this works. Close your mouth, stick your chin out, and breathe deeply in and out through your nose. Pay attention to how the air freely and naturally flows down and back out behind your jaws. After that, retract your jaw and pull your chin in towards your neck and throat as far as you can, and try taking another breath. Most likely, you'll feel like your throat is too narrow and restricted for you to breathe properly. This is the same effect that poorly developed facial and jaw structures have on the airway. In contrast, nasal breathing enhances smell, improves oxygen absorption in your lungs by increasing nitric oxide production in the sinuses, warms and humidifies the air you breathe before it reaches the lower airway, and helps filter impurities from the air via the hairs and cavities within the sinuses. But the benefits don't stop there, because nasal breathing is also responsible for proper craniofacial development, temporomandibular joint function, head posture, and overall facial symmetry. As you can imagine, when nasal breathing doesn't occur because we're stressed, sick, or have developed mouth breathing and shallow chest breathing habits, the body is forced into a series of reactions that prioritize getting oxygen into the blood, including sleep-disordered breathing, which is becoming pandemic in children and directly affects their growth, development, academic performance, behavior, and much more. Think of the classic hyperactive, bratty kid with an annoying personality, runny nose, and a constantly wide-open, gaping jaw. This isn't actually a stereotype, it's a reality. One reason nasal breathing significantly affects facial symmetry is that the forces exerted by the lips and tongue can actually influence facial development. As you breathe in, the lips and cheeks exert a slight inward sucking pressure as the tongue exerts an opposite force. But when you breathe through your nose, the tongue should lay naturally against the roof of the mouth, pressing against the roof of the mouth and causing it to grow wide and U-shaped, just like the tongue. This creates room for all of your teeth. Patrick himself has pointed out to me studies that were performed on young monkeys in which the researchers forced the monkeys to mouth breathe. As might be expected, the monkeys developed facial abnormalities and crooked teeth, which also happens in human kids. This is why so many people need to have their overcrowded wisdom teeth removed later in life. Now try mouth breathing. You'll find it quite difficult to rest your tongue in the roof of your mouth. Instead, the tongue of a mouth breather tends to rest near or on the floor of the mouth. The top jaw, therefore, isn't shaped by the tongue resting against it, leading to the research-proven development of a V-shaped mandible, narrow facial structure, and crooked teeth. On the other hand, a nose breather's jaw is typically square, wide, and jutting forward to the point that the chin sticks almost as far forward as the tip of the nose. The classic comic book illustration of a dominant male, such as Superman, Wolverine, or Mr. Incredible, often conveys strength by displaying a rugged and exaggerated jaw, while many comic book villains have narrow faces and recessed jawlines. Just watch any cartoon or read a comic book to see what I mean. For the same form implies function reasons I addressed earlier, a strong jawline is considered healthier and more attractive. When the jaws are set back, the airway is smaller, there is poor definition of the cheekbones as the face sinks downward, the nose becomes asymmetrical, and upper back and neck postural changes occur that result in decreased muscle strength, less chest expansion, impaired breathing, disrupted sleep, and even subpar athletic performance. When kids develop a mouth-breathing habit, instead of breathing through their noses, the tongue isn't in the correct position to act as a natural form of braces and cause the teeth to grow straight. But the bigger concern isn't actually how crooked the teeth are. It's that crooked teeth are a sign that you have a restricted airway. This leads to poor oxygenation throughout your entire body, causing far more serious problems than an ugly mouth. For correct development of the jaws, face, and airway, and to ensure proper oxygenation through the upper airway, it's imperative that a child habitually breathes through the nose, and that you make every attempt possible to also engage primarily in nasal breathing, even during difficult exercise sessions. This is the entire thesis of my friend John Douliard's book, Body, Mind, and Sport, and I highly recommend you give it a read to learn a host of drills that teach you the same techniques John used to breathe through his nose during difficult workouts and even during entire Ironman triathlons. Of course, all of Patrick McCown's books and his buteycoclinic.com and buteycoforkids.org websites are also excellent resources for learning more. Patrick McCown was part of a recent study on the Buteyko method at the University of Limerick to determine the method's efficacy as a therapeutic treatment for rhinitis, or inflammation and irritation of the nose in asthma patients. The results? Patients experienced a whopping 70% reduction in symptoms like snoring, difficulty during nasal breathing, nasal stiffness, poor sense of smell, difficulty sleeping, and forced mouth breathing. In just a few moments, you'll hear one of the primary exercises Patrick taught to participants in the study. It's the same exercise that I often perform during my breath hold walks, as detailed in Chapter 3. The link between breathing and sleep. Dr. Mark Burin, author of the 8-Hour Sleep Paradox and an authority on dental health, points out in his blog, Ask the Dentist, that humans are developing smaller jaws and smaller airways than our ancestors had, and this prevents us from reaching and sustaining deep, restorative sleep. He also believes that, in addition to mouth breathing, prolonged bottle feeding, sippy cups, and the consumption of soft processed foods,